home, or if they feel like Europe is not
I'm
their
sorry
home.
to interject. I'm sorry to interject there, but then I think it brings us to another issue that is much more relevant to deal with here. It's another branch of racism that we see having manifested in South African schools these days. Recently, we have parents taking to the streets to march against the racism or at least what they believe to be encouraged by race that is happening. I mean, racial intolerances that is happening in schools. But then when you speak of not taking young white kids to the black rural villages so that they can have that exposure of how other kids lives there, how other underprivileged people lives there. There are black parents who afford to take their children to those Model C schools, but those parents have never mixed up with the white people themselves. But upon them having made it in life, they take their children to a certain school which is dominated by whites. Do you think there is something that maybe lacks there in between for the black parents who are taking their children to the Model C school to teach those younger kids that being black, you are going to mix up with white children? This is how you should brace yourself so that you can maintain a relationship with them. Or maybe the white parents telling their kids that the school that we are taking you to, since you have never encountered young black kids, this is how you should brace yourself so that you can maintain a good relationship. Do we perhaps miss something in around that conversation?
So because of history again, the black parents and the white parents are not going to get along.
Yes.
I think until they die. Yeah. It's still very raw. A lot of our parents were there during the struggle. A lot of our parents know that the white parents are racist. They still experience it at work and elsewhere. So it's almost one of those situations where I don't think we'll ever be able to change the mindset.
Yes.
But again, if we were to try, it would be a matter of sitting both of them down and bringing them maybe once a week, once a month to the school and getting them to unpack racism and getting the white parents to travel to the townships to spend time with black people and understand what black parents go through. Let white kids and their parents catch taxis in the morning and catch trains and understand the struggles that black people go through. And then when they ask, why do you guys have to travel for so long? Understand that it's because of the structure of the history of this country. I think that's part of the problem. The other thing I wanted to address is, I don't think white people will ever take black people serious in this country, because the country that we live in now demands that black people aspire to being white. We haven't built a country where we're asking white people to aspire to black. In Africa, we're not asking white people to dress like Africans. We're not asking them to speak African languages. We're not asking them to use African medicine. We're not asking them to study African history. Everything in the South Africa that we live in now demands that a black child learns English, dresses like a European, wants to maybe be lighter, wants to work for a white person, wants to deal with Western medication and all those other things. And because of that superiority complex, white people will obviously see themselves as superior. In the same way that men are not being demanded to aspire, women are demanded to aspire to being strong and ambitious and brave like men if they want to make it, at least in the economic world. So for that reason, men will always feel superior. And in the same breath, white people will always feel superior because it is them that black people are expected to assimilate and emulate.
You know, I was following the stories of those protests where I unfortunately I can't pronounce the name of that school because it's an Afrikaner name and I've never done Afrikaans at school. It was abolished when I was about to do grade 4. I don't know if it's fortunately or it's unfortunately. But then there was one white parent there who was interviewed by, I think it's SABC, who says he doesn't believe there is racism in that school. According to him, when a white kid is fighting with another white kid, that doesn't attract a lot of attention. It's just kids fighting, then you just tell them to stop. Just like when a black kid is fighting another black kid within that school, it's not grabbing, it's not an attention grabbing incident. You just tell the kids to stop. But when it becomes a white kid fighting a black kid, it becomes something which it actually engrosses a lot of attention, and people, it actually arouses emotions, and it makes headlines on all the media platforms. Listening to this, I happen to be angry, but then at the same time try and calm myself, because here you find a parent of a white kid who claims that there is no, he is a white, by the way, he claims that there is no racism in school. Are we in an era where white people are actually enjoying doing as they wish in perpetrating the racism, and also having the audacity to go to the media publicly so and say there is nothing such as racism here? Don't we have any avenues that we can resort to bring such people to account for such comments? Because I think it's an undermining comment to say there is no racism while there is a visual video that we have seen.
These matters are actually so deep and so layered.
Yes.
It definitely, it's correct that when white kids fight amongst each other, it's not a big issue.
Yes.
And when black kids fight against each other, it's not a big issue. But as soon as a black kid and a white kid fight, it's racism. In the same way that if two men fight with each other, it's not a big issue.
Yes.
But as soon as a man and a woman
they are
fighting,
yes,
it becomes a huge issue.
Mm.
You know, it could, of course, happen that it's not racism.
Yes.
The problem is, as soon as the races are different, we have to address racism, because this country is so race sensitive.
Yes.
And we need to unpack what's happening so that even the parents themselves understand what is happening. A lot of white parents are very ignorant of racism because, like I said, they haven't been trained. In the same way, a lot of men are sexist, but they don't realize it because they haven't been trained. If a woman comes looking for a job to come and work in your garden, and you're like, no, Aussie, you can't come work in my garden.
Yeah.
That's sexism. But we don't know that that's sexist. You'd be like, no, man, I don't think she'll survive here. And it's like, why not? Is it because she doesn't have a penis? In the same way that a man can go to a creche, or a man can apply for a job as a babysitter, and no one will hire him because they'll say, you're a man.
Of course.
You know, and people haven't unpacked these issues of what exactly is the issue. Do we have an issue with the private parts?
Yeah.
Do we have an issue with the hormone levels of testosterone or estrogen?
The physical power.
And also when it comes to issues of race, why were the kids fighting, for example? Were they fighting because someone called the other child a kafir? Or was an issue where the one child was stealing the other one's girlfriend, so they're fighting over girls? You know, or is it something else? And then once we realize it's different races, yes, we have to address race. In the same way, if we find out that a man and a woman are fighting, we need to find out, is this man bullying this woman? Is it GBV? Because you might find out that this guy is slapping this woman because she's been punching him the whole week, and she smashed his car.
Don't you think with the amount of anger that is in us when it comes to the issues related to racism, whenever you see a black kid fighting with a white kid, do you think there is still a time for people to want to understand what is it that caused the fight, whether is it motivated by racism, or it was just some simple kids fight? Do you think there is still a time to apply mind when things are like that? Because I think even now, if I post a video of a white kid fighting with a black kid in my yard, and I post it on Facebook or on Twitter, the comments are obviously going to be about racism before they could even understand what is it that we're fighting for. Without even wanting to understand whether it's the black kid who's wrong or the white kid. Do you think there's still going to be a time to investigate as to whether, or to seek to understand as to whether what started the fight between those kids?
If we don't invest time in getting to understand, and if we don't invest time in training people, society is never going to get better.
Yes.
And obviously the leaders are not doing enough, because the leaders, even when they campaign politically, they still emphasize very much on race and apartheid. So if we're going to carry on with racism as it stands, we need to just decide that black people and white people mustn't live together. And the ones who want to live together can also live together, but in a separate space.
Yeah.
Because I know Robert Sobukwe and Stephen Bantu Bigo, they were happy with black people and white people living apart. They just didn't want white people disturbing black spaces.
Yeah.
I believe Eugene Terplanche of the 8WP also believed in separate states for black people and white people. If black people don't want to try and understand white people, if white people don't want to try and understand black people, then those people need to accept we will never get along. And I think we need to maybe start having the conversation of living apart, and saying, look, we are different animals. We don't want to get along, maybe because of history or because we look down on each other, and we must live separately and then try and make it work somehow.
So
but if we say we don't want to live like that, if we say we don't want to live like that, then we need to invest in the training and the understanding. And people must say, look, I'm willing to, let's say I hate white people, I think they're racist, but I'm willing to learn because I want to live with them. But if you're saying I don't want to live with white people and I don't want to learn, then we maybe need to start looking into building black communities and separate white communities like Orania, where different races don't have to mix. Yeah.
Now that you have mentioned that, let's look at it predominantly in South Africa, how this thing is unfolding. You have black people who are actually complaining about racism, which keeps on growing in South Africa. And the interesting part is that the black people are complaining about the white, and they are accusing them of being racist, and they're accusing them of actually perpetuating the racism. Now you go to white people, the white people, they will tell you that obviously it's those black. Actually, if it was not for this black attitude, there wouldn't be a racism in this country. It's like it's a kind of a zebra debate as to racism is actually within between the black and the white only. While when you look at in South Africa, you find that there are many other different races which are playing part in this. We have, for instance, Indians, which are in South Africa, and they are participating in economy. They are out there doing their things. Now, are we maybe trying to exclude or reduce the issue of racism to only a zebra debate? Or is there something that we're missing about other races such as Indians and others?
So the truth of the matter is that most Indians and most Chinese look down on black people. The difference is that they've never colonized this country. They've never set up policies to push black people off land. They've never jailed black people or beaten or killed black people.